and we want to welcome you to our session focused on Microsoft Copilot. Steve Young, our Chief Information Officer, is going to show us around and uh, help us learn a little bit about this new technology. And if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be watching that, and I imagine Steve will also be open to answering questions as we go along. So thanks again for being with us.
Hi, everybody. Yep. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks, everybody, for your interest in this and time. Yeah, as Sarah said, please feel free to ask questions, as we go through this. I have a brief agenda here. So I think probably a lot of people are familiar with Office 365 in general, but there's probably some folks that aren't. So I was going to spend just a couple minutes just kind of orienting you on that, and then provide an overview of what Copilot is and kind of Microsoft's approach to AI. And then, we'll dive right into some demonstrations. So first we'll do some demonstrations with Microsoft Word, and then PowerPoint, and then finally some demonstrations in Excel. My personal favorite are the Excel demonstrations, but hopefully folks will find value in all of these platforms. So then we will, to close this out, we'll talk about, okay, so you're excited, or maybe you're not excited, what you could do next. And the whole presentation and the reference materials and links and everything will be provided. I'll give that to Dr. Partlier, and she'll distribute it as she normally does after these sessions. So, and I apologize, these slides are very wordy because, again, the idea is that they'll be your reference afterwards. So Office, I think probably everybody's familiar with Microsoft Office. Probably most of us still think of Office as, the program that's running on your computer, where you open up Microsoft Word, and that is still Office. But Microsoft also has an online version of Office that you can access a few different ways, and I'll just kind of show you how to do that. If any of you have used Google Docs or Google Sheets and Google Drive, it's basically Microsoft's version of that. There's a few differences between Google, a few important differences between what Google has and what Microsoft has. One of those is that the online version of Office integrates with your local version of Office. So if you're logged in, you'd be able to relatively easily exchange files back and forth between the two. There's a few other differences, but they're not really relevant to today's discussion. I do want to mention, though, that the IT department, myself, Amy, Heather, and several of us, we're going to be doing a broader training campaign around using Microsoft Office and other tools like Microsoft Teams in preparation for a big move of our workgroups folders, our G&H drives, to Microsoft OneDrive. And that's going to be in the summer, over the summer and into the fall. I also want to point out, for those that might not know, is that as an employee of the college, you get a benefit of that. You can access Office, and install a personal copy of Office on your home computer at no cost. Although, if you were to separate from the college, then that license would stop working. Another thing, and I guess I mentioned it before, but when you are working with OneDrive or with Microsoft Online, Office 365, it stores things in the cloud. So I know that's been something that has confused some folks because it looks like Word, and acts like Word, except that, when you look in your My Documents on your computer, you're not going to see the files there, and that's because they're stored in your OneDrive account, which, again, I'll just briefly show you. So, okay, let's see. So the easy path to get to Office 365 and to your OneDrive is if you just go to the Insider, and actually that address is just insider.blueridge.edu, and then that takes you to the right place. If you're using a computer on campus, most likely you're not even gonna get prompted to log in. It's just gonna log you right in with your Blue Ridge credentials. If you're using a computer off campus, or if you might be using a Mac, which it doesn't have that functionality to automatically log in, then when you are prompted to log in, just remember to use your full college email address, and then whatever your current password is. And of course, if you're accessing it from a new location or a web browser they haven't used before, it might prompt you for that multi-factor authentication that I know everybody loves to do. So the quick way to get to your OneDrive is just right here on the left-hand side of the Insider. There's a menu item, looks like a page, I guess, with a dog eared corner. And here you go, you get to your recent files, and you can click on any one of those and access those files. And if you do, it takes you to your OneDrive, which this is what OneDrive looks like. So actually, if I was in my file, so you can create folders and do all the normal stuff you'd expect, with file management. So today, most of the stuff that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be working on a set of files that I put in a folder here. So Copilot works only with files that are in OneDrive. So the Copilot Online. Now there is a version of Copilot for Office that runs on your local computer, but many people don't have that latest version of Office. So IT staff, will be, as part of our normal processes, will be upgrading Office on your local computer. So you would be able to access it on the local machine, but for now, it's really confined to the cloud version of Office, which the cloud version of Office, there's a few differences, but it's probably at this point 95 or more percent the same as what you're used to with Office products that are local. So before I go to the next part of this, introducing Copilot, does anybody have any questions about just Microsoft Office 365 in general?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet, Steve.
Yep, okay. So we'll just go right ahead. So Copilot. So I think we've all, because this isn't the first demonstration that folks are doing, and I imagine at this point probably most of you have played around with some AI tool, like for example, OpenAI's ChatGPT. And then of course, Google has what they briefly called Bard, but what is now called Gemini. And I would note that all employees have access to Gemini, and Gemini is free. But if you just go to gemini.google.com, or if you're logged into your email account, you click on that little grid icon in your email in the upper right, and you can find Gemini there. So Gemini and ChatGPT, they're more or less like their own little service. They're their own little web page. So you can ask questions, you can go to that web page, ask questions, and do what you want to do there. At this point, OpenAI's ChatGPT is still probably a little bit more advanced than Gemini, but they're both kind of catching up, racing to a better state. So you can do things like upload files with ChatGPT, or not quite there yet with Gemini, but for example, if you wanted to ask for a summary of a Word document, you could upload that document to ChatGPT. Although I guess I should qualify that, because I think that is a premium feature, so you'd have to pay for a subscription for ChatGPT to upload files, to process files. Although you can, just copy and paste the text in there. But you can see that's a little bit clunky, right? Because you're going to this other web page when you might be working on a document in Microsoft Word, or an email in your email client. You have to kind of go out to this other website to, have the AI assistant help you. So Microsoft's approach is they actually own a chunk of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is actually what's really kind of the brains in the background. But rather than have you go to a separate website, Microsoft's approach is to integrate, that AI system, their version of ChatGPT, right into their products. For better or worse, they're branding all of these AI tools as Copilot, which can get confusing. For example, Windows 11, which is the latest version of Windows, it has Copilot built into it. So kind of similar to how when you click on the Start button, for those that use Windows, there's a type to search box there. Well, now that is actually a chat with an AI agent. So that's Windows Copilot. And what we'll be going over today is technically called Microsoft Copilot for Office 365. So, why is Microsoft doing this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. But the reason that they call it Copilot, of course, is because they see AI as a tool to work alongside of you, not necessarily something that is, going to just on its own work for you. So in other words, they don't intend, at least at this point, for it to just run automatically or autonomously. It's meant to be an interactive assistant for you. By integrating it into their tools, they're adding kind of an additional layer of brains on top of the ChatGPT brains. And that means that their Copilot for Office 365 knows Microsoft Word, it knows Excel, so it knows how to write Excel formulas and things like that. And it can access documents that you have when you ask it to. So that's an important few things to keep in mind. So it's integrated. It has a lot of benefits because it's integrated. You won't have to copy and paste or upload files. It's just going to be right there. So Copilot isn't free. So it's currently for us right now, it's that's actually $31 per month, plus tax actually, per month per person. So we'll talk about, if you're interested in pursuing this, at least kicking the tires and testing it. At the end here, we'll give you some strategies for how you could go about doing that. So any questions on just kind of the general overview before we dive into some of the demonstrations? No. Okay, is everybody awake?
Hey, Steve, I actually have a quick question. So,
Okay.
if it can access all of your files and stuff, like, what's kind of the privacy or what, like, if I'm using it for Excel and I've got a file that has, student IDs and birth dates and things like that in it, um, are there any concerns over privacy or what Microsoft is doing? I mean, is it stay local to my machine or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a more detailed answer in the references on the slide deck that I'll share. But one of the other things, and I don't know why I didn't put it on this slide, I put it on the reference slide, but Microsoft understands these concerns, and unlike the other platforms, at least currently, they actually have some privacy guarantees. So the way they've architected it, or at least the way they explain they've architected it, is so our instance of Office, so all of the college employees that access Microsoft Office or SharePoint Online or any of those Microsoft Online tools using the Blue Ridge account, what they're accessing is our, tenant. That's what Microsoft calls it. So the tenant is basically our own kind of cordoned off chunk of, Microsoft Cloud. And with our existing campus license with Microsoft, they're already contractually obligated to make sure they abide by FERPA rules and keep our data private. Google actually has the same requirement. So the way they've designed, or at least the way they've reportedly designed the Copilot system is all of the data is going to remain in our tenant. So in other words, it's not going to go to somebody else's tenant. It's not going to go into like a public cloud area. So if you upload documents and it, searches the documents, looks through it, that data isn't going to go anywhere. Having said that, it also has another feature, again, this is according to Microsoft, that it can't just look at all of your OneDrive files. When you're in Office, and we'll see this in a second, you have to click the Copilot button, and clicking the Copilot button while you have a document open, that essentially gives it permission for that document. So if you opened up a document in Office 365 online and it had sensitive data and you didn't really want to have that shared with the Copilot, you just don't click that Copilot icon. I still, and this is the last slide here, is I still would suggest that we avoid sending sensitive data to any AI platform, including Copilot, but there's a little bit more wiggle room with Copilot at this point because of the contractual obligations. I actually was in a CIO meeting earlier today with folks in the system office. The system office is working on their own AI policies, and of course, their policies have to go through a pretty extensive vetting process. But at this point, they are fairly certain that they're going to allow sensitive data to be accessed in their tenant with Copilot. So that's a great question. Again, I think, if you have a spreadsheet that's got, 1,000 social security numbers or something on it, I wouldn't do anything with that. But if you have a document that has, student IDs and GPAs or things like that, I think, we at this point, because of that contract that we have with Microsoft that guarantees, that they'll abide by FERPA and our data is kept in our own tenant, I think that that's okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll point out, so on our department website, there's a link with a list of systems that we, explicitly okay for processing sensitive data. And our Office platform is already one of them, because that's, where, folks have data already, OneDrive files. There's already a lot of people that are using that OneDrive, as their G drive or H drive. So yeah, great question. Thank you for that. Okay, so what the heck can this potentially do for you? And we're gonna see all this in a moment. But and actually I guess I should have advanced to the slide while I was talking a moment ago. But the bottom line is it can help you save time by automating some repetitive or maybe tedious tasks. It could help you enhance output, so it can maybe, brainstorm things that you didn't think of, or, offer suggestions if you're stuck. And then unlock insights. So if we're talking about a Word document, insights could be just a summary of a document, of a really long document. If we're talking about Excel, insights could be quickly creating charts or finding patterns. I'm not really impressed by too much, but I was, I'll say, somewhat impressed with Copilot's integration with Excel. Having said that, I would note that, Excel, has always been geared for businesses. So it seems to be a little bit better at understanding, business data. But I was able to come up with some tricks to help it understand some academic data. So it, when we do the live demo, I guess you guys will judge how useful it could potentially be. So here we go. We're going to dive in. So we're going to do some demonstrations with Word, then PowerPoint, and then finally Excel. Oops. Get this up here. So the first demo I wanted to do is show a Word document that I've already created and see how this AI tool can help me edit this document maybe a little bit more quickly than I would just on my own. So let me pull up my little script here. So this document actually was I copied this from myself. So believe it or not, I actually wrote this, with my own measly human brain a while ago. And what I did is I just pasted it in here and rewrote parts of it to make it just harder to read. So not only did I make it harder to read, grammatically and just, narrative flow. I don't know if Ben Hardy is on, but he's probably cringing to seeing this. Um, but it's just not elegantly worded. It's still saying what it said before. It's just much harder to read. Not only did I do that, but I also purposely made some text here that's hard to see for a normal person and really would be hard to see for somebody that was visually impaired. So I basically made this purposely less accessible. So accessibility. So I think probably I know Sarah and a lot of folks over the years have been doing a lot of training on accessibility. So, when we say accessibility, this means, how easy is it for the document or whatever, web page or whatever it is that we're talking about for somebody that might have an impairment, either visual impairment or maybe a cognitive issues with reading, things like that. So the accessibility checker leaves a little bit to be desired. So when I run the check accessibility, it only complains that this picture doesn't have a description in it. And when they're talking about description, what that refers to is what's called alternative text. So alternative text is text that if somebody was using a screen reader to read a document, that would be what they would what their screen reader would read them, since they wouldn't be able to see the image. So now I'm going to actually go ahead and activate Copilot and have Copilot help me fix all these issues. So if you have a license for Copilot and it's enabled, you can get to it from the Home tab. And then if you see over here on the right, there's this button Copilot. So now when I click that, now Copilot can see this document. And, it has some tips, you could summarize the document. I'll go ahead and do that really quick. This is, of course, pretty short document. So I don't know how useful a summary is of this document, but, larger documents, it can create a pretty decent summary pretty quickly. So just to note a few things off the bat, literally all I did was I clicked, summarize this doc, which just pre-populated the prompt field here. And I didn't do any formatting, didn't do anything else. And it came up with this pretty, relatively decent summary of this. And you can see it's got a shortcut to copy the text there. And, if you do this copy, it'll copy not only the text, but also the formatting. So the next thing I'll do is ask it, instead of using the accessibility review button, which we just saw a minute ago that wasn't super great, I'm just gonna paste this in here, pre-type this. It's up to you all how polite you want to be to your future AI overlords there. I don't know why, but I can't get out of the habit of saying please and can you. So I'm just rolling with it, but of course you don't have to do that. So here it's given me several suggestions and said, and this is slightly different from what it did when I did this practice run on Tuesday. And that's something important to note with AI. So AI isn't, this completely new thing. It's a different way to create software. But the difference is that, unlike the software that you're generally familiar with, that, it's always going to do the same thing each time. AI might not do the same thing each time, depending on, the nuances of how you asked it. And just, honestly, other factors that we'll just never know about. But asking the same question with the same document can occasionally produce slightly different results. I haven't really seen dramatically different results, but just realize that there's going to be some variation, and that's just kind of the nature of how AI software works. So I'm going to say, I'm going to add to this prompt here. And instead of just saying, suggest changes to make the document more accessible, I'm just going to add the phrase, can you please review this document and suggest changes that will make it more accessible and easier for someone with a visual impairment to read. And give it a minute here. So right away, it's given substantially better advice than the Microsoft Word built-in accessibility checker. So it's talking about the font size, it's talking about contrast. So right here, whoops, I did that the opposite of what I wanted to do. And it talks about spacing. So if somebody were reading this document with a screen reader, there's a whole bunch of character turns or, enters. So the screen reader would read that. So it's just talking about formatting there. So anyway, so that's given me some tips. I'm not going to go through all of those tips. But when we do the demo with PowerPoint, since there's a lot more images that we'll deal with there, that'll be even more interesting demo, I think, of accessibility, because it'll automatically generate alternative text or descriptions of images. So now the last thing I'll do here is just ask it to, fix all spelling and grammar issues in this document. So yeah, this is interesting because it was able to do this a couple of days ago. If I probably rephrase that, it probably would work. But I don't want to get too stuck on this. But yeah, definitely that's one of the core capabilities, is that you can, have it go through and basically automatically look at grammar and spelling issues. It's not really that different from what we're used to, right? With Office tools that have had grammar and spell checkers built in for a while. So now the last thing I'll do with Word here is I'm going to create a new Word document. Oops. There we go. And it takes a few moments to load, but after a moment, so you see the Copilot icon there, and that's, that's fine. We could use that. But just to show you a different way to go about things, there's this inline Copilot icon. One difference is, at least as currently, so using this sidebar chat in Word, at least, it doesn't directly edit your document. And there's probably, several reasons for that, but that seems to be a design choice on Microsoft's part. So, the things that I was asking of it a moment ago, it was suggesting things right here. And if I asked it to summarize or asked it for, some content, I could click copy and I could paste it into the document. Whereas here, if I wanted to start, if I wanted Copilot to directly edit my document, I can click on that inline icon there. And I think that's, Microsoft's way of saying, hey, I'm giving you permission to directly interface, directly mess with my document. So yeah, I was gonna ask folks for suggestions on what to draft, but just for time's sake, I'm just gonna do something generic here. So I played with a few different summaries, but I think this is one that I kind of like because it's pretty straightforward. So I'm asking it to write, excuse me, I'm asking it to write an outline for an essay about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, the King of England. So you can see it's writing content right in the document. On its own, it's putting in bullet points and it's putting formatting in that makes sense. For folks that understand, that are familiar with accessibility, I'll note too that these items use like the actual header styles, which is the recommended way, to create headings. So that way, somebody who's reading with a screen reader, their screen reader would understand the structure of a document as opposed to if you just use bold or some other features to highlight. So I'm not a historian, not sure if Russ Foster is on, but it looks relatively accurate to me. And of course, Copilot and a lot of these tools now, they're directly connected to the internet, so they're getting this information not only from their database, but they can also get more current information, from the internet. So if you wanted to ask it to write a document about relatively current events, it could do that. Of course, the more current the event, then you might not get all of the results just because it hasn't kind of scavenged the internet for that yet. So let's see, cloud files. So the next demo I was going to do is PowerPoint. So for PowerPoint, I figured I'd cut right to the chase here. Okay, create a PowerPoint presentation. And with PowerPoint, probably because slides can have background images and other content, there isn't that inline draft with Copilot button. You would instead, use the sidebar. And again, everything I just did with the inline button, you could do with the sidebar. It's just that it wouldn't necessarily directly edit the document. You would have to copy and paste the content in there, but it would include the formatting and everything you need. So if you have a document that's already written and you wanted to edit it, but you're worried what it's going to do, the sidebar is probably your better option for that. Whereas if you have a blank document, and you just want to, have the AI system kind of help you get started, then you can use that inline and just save that extra step of copying and pasting. So I'm going to ask it to do this, and now I'm curious because I've done this 3 times, and each time it's given me a slightly different presentation. So I'm curious. I'm hoping that the live demo forces are shining here on us. So the prompt here that I have is create a presentation about how artificial intelligence could be helpful to faculty at a community college. Please include suggestions that can help with creating engaging lesson plans, as well as suggestions that can help them perform administrative tasks more efficiently. So, and keep in mind, this is a PowerPoint presentation, not a Word document. So it's, I'm not expecting a lot of detail. I'm expecting more or less an outline. And I'm hoping it's going to include some nice graphics and some other information and, kind of formatting and things that would make it visually appealing. And yeah, this is interesting. It's similar, but it's different than the other two times I've done this. But you could see just based on that one sentence, it's gone out and created this little video. It's created a few slides, and it's selected some clip art. And you could easily, if I didn't like this clip art, for example, if I wanted, more diverse representation or something, I could just ask it, please modify this presentation. But one thing I wanted to point out, and I hope it's still true, is that the images that it inserts, it actually automatically generates that alternative text for the image, which of course, as the author, you should still review that and make sure it's appropriate. But that at least, could save some time. And since I want to make sure that there's time for the Excel demos, I'm not going to, keep prompting it here, but when I've worked in this in the past, I've done, just what I said. Can you please modify this, in XYZ or expand on this or whatnot? And it does it. Of course, just reading this, you're going to see, I mean, this is probably too bland to just use. But, again, it could be a way to get over writer's block or, a way to kind of quickly get started on something. Or of course you can, create a PowerPoint and then load it up in here and then have Copilot suggest edits. For example, you could ask it to add alternative text to images that are in the PowerPoint. So before I move on to Excel, does anybody have any questions?
Steve, can you scroll down a minute? I'm noticing there's like text in the notes. Is that right? It's got,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you. Yep.
so it's even given us speaking notes.
Yep. You can see the speaking notes are similar to, but not exactly the same as the bullet points there. Yep. It's great. Thank you for that, Sarah. Okay, so for folks that use Excel for data analytics, so this, of course, this can apply to everybody, but and this might be more familiar for staff members. Yeah, got logged out of there. So just to prove that I don't have any tricks up my sleeve here, I was gonna run this, get the actual raw data. So, there's no tricks going on here, but I made a kind of simplified version of a data report that I believe our registrar, and actually Dr. Harrell probably might be familiar with. And I simplified it, just, a little bit for this demo, but it's really the actual data from our system. I've removed any identifying information. So there's not really concerns here about that. So I'm just going to run the report. While that's running, I'm going to get my, I'm just going to get my screen set up, the next screen set up here. Oh, okay, so that report finished. So just looking at this report, so we have the end date of the academic credential file, so that, you know, could be when they, for most of these records, since it was several years ago, that most of the time that's when they received their credential. So when they graduated or received a degree. So I've got the program code, start term, and then just a list of academic terms that they attended. I don't remember what CIP stands for. Maybe Jessica knows. Then we have the age, and of course, oh, Jessica, you could go ahead if you know what CIP is.
I was just gonna say, I don't remember the exact acronym, but it's related to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and classifying the credential with occupations and industries.
Ah, yeah, that's right. And then we had the, you know, cohort group that they're in. So, you know, what basically when they entered the curriculum program, and then just the friendly title of the program, their final GPA, and then the total number of credits that they completed. And I would note that, you know, not everybody necessarily here has completed credits or completed a degree, but this would be all the credits that they've, you know, already earned. Since I am looking at data from a few years ago, there's probably not many current students in here. There's a whole bunch of other fields that I can add. I mean, actually, there's a whole bunch of other fields that I removed, but I, you know, just didn't want to have additional fields that could potentially uniquely identify anybody, knowing that this would be recorded. So I'm just going to export the results here. One trick I'm going to do is I want to separate multi-value. So like, for example, the terms, you know, there's multiple values in that one field. So I want to keep it in, you know, that one column in Excel, but I just want to comma separate them and not have them listed like this, just so it's easier to work with that data. So I just exported it to my local computer here, and I'm going to upload this to my OneDrive because again, you know, the Copilot products, you know, the files would have to be in OneDrive to work with that. Whoops. Oh, did I not upload? Well, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that CSV file uploaded. Well, in any case, I mean, I could just use the same. I downloaded this a few days ago. It's the same thing. Whoops, that is not it. It's the Excel file. There we go. So this is the same file. I'm not exactly sure what I did wrong there. But this is the same data that we just saw a moment ago. So now I'm going to turn Copilot on. So, you know, once I click this here, it has access to my data. One thing I am going to do, and I actually did this after I uploaded this particular file, is I'm changing, you know, modifying the column headers slightly just so that it's easier for me to type when I want to refer to them. I don't necessarily have to do this, but this way it's just, I don't have to type multiple things to reference that. So like, for example, I don't want to have to type all of this for GPA, so I'm just going to put that column header as GPA and then completed credits and academic terms. There we go. So one factor here is to work with the data. You need to put the data into a table format, and that's pretty easy to do. So you just do insert table. Since all of my columns are, they have data and they're populated, I'm gonna accept a suggestion, and it should just convert all that data into a table. And now it's accessible to the Copilot system. So first thing I'm going to do is ask it to create a bar chart that shows the average GPA by program title. So the program title, and I apologize, I should mention, so each row of this is one student. So you see there's multiple welding certificates, so that's, each one of those is one individual student. So I think there's, how many records? I can't remember now. There's, I think 5,000 something records. Oh, no, yeah, this is the unduplicated. So yeah, so 763 records. So 760, or well, the header row. So 762 students. So I'm just going to put this prompt in. Clustered bar chart that shows the average GPA by program title. So while it's working that, I'll point out a few things. So there's a column here, GPA, there's a column program title. So hopefully that's how it's figuring out what I want to search. But then there's a subtle thing, there's an additional thing in here, right? Average GPA. Well, these aren't the average GPAs, these are the individual GPAs for each individual student. So it's not only figuring out that I'm talking about this column and this column, but it's also figuring out that I want to average for each one of, for each program. So it's going to go through, if I was doing this manually, and Dr. Harrell or other folks that are more familiar with this stuff, they probably have a more efficient way, but I'd probably either sort or group this data by the program title and then do an average. So it'd take multiple steps. If you're very familiar with Excel, it wouldn't take that long, but it would take several steps. So in the time it took me to explain that, it's already done it. I'm going to add it to a sheet. So another thing, just like with Word, is it really doesn't want to directly change your data, right? Because, a spreadsheet could be really complicated. You might not see every change that it made. So that's something to think about. And it said it added. I don't see the new sheet. There we go. Okay. So here we go. So it created this table. It's a summary. I spot checked this with the demo that I did the other day. And just looking at this now, the numbers look very familiar. So I think that it's been consistent in that calculation. But it's if you're going to produce this output, it's still up to you to vet it and ensure that it's accurate. But you can see just with that one sentence, it created this chart and it gave me a good summary. Just doing this probably saved me, 10, 15 minutes maybe of time. So I'm not done with it. Have a few more things that I want to do with it. So let's see here. So I'm going to do this. I don't know if I'm going to have time to follow up on this, but I can tell you that there is a way to, well, actually, I'm just going to skip that one. I'm going to do this here. So this next one, I'm explaining that the column titled terms is a comma-separated list of each academic semester a student attended. Can you please insert a new column that counts the number of academic semesters each student attended? So just want a count of the number of terms that a student attended, or the number of semesters that a student attended. So press an enter on that. I was able to do this without explaining terms, but I did this in 2 sentences to point out that in the first sentence, I link the column terms to the phrase academic semester, and then in the second sentence, I'm not talking about terms, I'm just talking about academic semesters. So now you can see it actually created a formula, and it's showing me that formula, giving me a chance to review that formula, and looks good. So I'm gonna just say, go ahead and insert that column. So yep, spot checking this. This looks pretty similar to what it did before. Just for our own visual aesthetics, I'm going to move this column over here, just so that the semesters attended and then the completed credits are next to each other. So that, saved me a little bit of time. I probably would have had to, off the top of my head, I wouldn't have known to use that formula. So I probably would have had to have done a search and figured it out and inserted that. So that probably saved me a few minutes right there. Now I'm interested in can you please add a column that shows the average number of credit hours per semester attended? So completed credits, semester attended. And once it does this, I just have one more demo with this, and then I'm going to try to sneak in one more Excel demo using data from our inventory report from Excel. And again, feel free to unmute and ask a question, or you could type it in chat. So this is doing a count of the completed credits, dividing it by semesters attended. That's an average. So adding that column, and again, I'm going to cut that column and move it over, just for our visual, just making it kind of visually a little bit better. There we go. So that looks about right? 89 divided by 11, 69 divided by 12. That looks correct. Now the last thing is I want a new cluster chart. That shows the average credit hours per semester for each program title. So in other words, it's going to have to go through all of these records, again, group by the program title, and then come up with an average of the semester hours, or the average number of credit hours taken per semester for that program. There it is. So I'm going to click on this and hopefully it actually adds it this time. There we go. So now we have this data. You can kind of imagine some of the next things you might want to do. So what I continued playing with this demo, but I don't think we have enough time. But for example, I asked it to do some analysis based on completions and the number of credit hours, to see if there was some correlation I could find with the average number of credit hours a student was taking and how successful they were completing. So again, just showing you, it saved quite a bit of time, and it did it in a way that was pretty transparent, and that each step of the way, it let me review what it's doing, and then it let me make the edits to the document. It didn't just go in and, tear up all of my data and make changes to it. So the last demo,
I have hopefully a quick question. You can just, we
yep,
can
go
talk
ahead.
later, I guess, but, i- and playing around with it, have you found that this could potentially be useful for like cleaning data? Like for missing data, things that aren't coded correctly or things like that? Or is it more kind of analysis kind of stuff?
That's a great question. So yes, it, again, it's, uh, academic data it's not as familiar with it, but that doesn't necessarily matter. But you just might have to explain things a little bit, give it some context. But I did have it like remove outliers, for example. One of the things I'd point out in that previous one, and I can continue after 3 for a bit just to make the recording complete, but I'd understand if anybody has to leave, but I think it'd be good to just have a complete recording. But one of the things that I did here was I asked it to remove programs that just have one data point. So remove the outliers. I also had it remove outliers or 0 credit folks. And that was pretty easy. So just, hey, any row that has 0 completed credits, remove that row, and instead of removing it, you could just say don't include that in the chart. But to answer your question, yes, just with the caveat of, we might have to explain our data a little bit. Things that I think I found helpful is, if your heading has a lot of spaces in it, just maybe a little bit easier to have the underscores there and refer to it at least once, with that. But then, like I did before, you can kind of make an alias to that by saying completed credits is this, or terms is academic semesters, and it keeps that context and understands it for the rest of your chat.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, great question. So this report, I figured since I did a report that was kind of academic data, I would do one that's totally different data. So again, the first step with this is to make this data a chart, or I'm sorry, not a chart, a table. And once it's a table, now I can go to the Home tab and then click the Copilot button again, and now Copilot can see the data. So again, clicking that button, it's giving Copilot permission to access that data. So I will jump into the inventory demo. There's just a couple of things I'm doing with this. So this is an easy one. So the steward, which, is just the employee responsible for the item, their name is split up, last name first, and I'm just asking to concatenate that together to create a column that just has the name right together. And yeah, live demos always take longer than you'd want.
While we wait, Steve, I got a quick question.
Yep.
So I noticed the Copilot stuff on the right-hand side, and I know it's Copilot for each different, like Excel, Word, whatever. Does that stay associated with the document once you save it? So you have like a history, or once you've used it, and it's moved on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, if you close the document, it doesn't show up here, but that's a good question if you can get back to the history. I'm not 100% sure. That's a great question. I know you can view previous prompts here, but I don't know. I'd have to play around with that. We could try it at the end of this. That's a good question. My guess is yes, but I'm not 100% sure. And of course, you can, as you're working on it, you can copy the prompts. Each time it gives output, it has a copy here, so you can kind of squirrel stuff away.
Okay, that's what I was thinking about, because the whole idea was to make life easier by utilizing that.
Yeah, and so I just acquired a license for this because we have to purchase licenses like a week and a half ago, not even. And just in that time, I've noticed some changes, some improvements to it. So they're very actively working on this. So now that I have that in there, now I'm gonna ask it to create a column for the age of each item. So just looking at the data here, so there's a purchase date. So the date, it's not really easy to do math directly with dates. So I'm going to ask it to create a column that shows the current age of the item based on the purchase date. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not explaining what purchase date is or anything. But then I'm asking it to call that new column item underscore age. So while it's doing this, I'll just point out it is 3, but I'll continue. And the presentation that I give to Sarah, and this video will have some suggestions for if you are interested in having a license, just a few quick steps that you can do to potentially get that. And of course, the first step would be to talk to your budget manager. So
Steve, I'm probably gonna go ahead and stop the recording if that's okay.
Well, actually, could you just continue, because then we would just have a complete recording?
Sure, if you want to go ahead and stop it. I have another call I have to get on, so
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna take off. Thanks to everyone who's still on the call.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm gonna just move this item over a little bit, just again to make it a little bit easier to read. And so now the last thing I want to do is I'm just going to ask it to create a chart. Oops. I'm just going to ask it to create a chart that shows the average age of an item for each steward. So in other words, we're going to see how old collectively, like the average collective age of all of the items for each given asset steward. And here we go. So it's still thinking. There we go. So I'll add this to a second sheet, and voila. So if I were to have done this by hand, it probably would have taken me a good 10 plus minutes. But with just a few prompts and a couple of minutes, it just went ahead and created this chart. So those were the demos. So the last thing I was going to point out is what you can do next. So if you think that Copilot could benefit you in your job, just know that it costs $31 per month, actually plus tax, or a total of $397 per year. That does include tax. So of course, you don't really know, right, until you try. So what you might consider doing is, if you are interested in this, if you think it could be helpful to you, talk to your budget manager and see if you could maybe try this for 3 months. So that would be from April through June. So that would be till the end of this fiscal year, and that would be about $100. And on the form, which again you'll have that link there in a little bit, you can just click that form and you can again work with your budget manager. So you can just say, hey, I just want to sign up for the 3 months, and then I'm going to figure it out afterwards if I want to continue. Or on the form, if giddy up, I just want to go ahead and do this, it's worth 300 or I guess $400 to go ahead and give it a try. Then you can indicate that on that form as well. And I'll work with the business office and with budget managers, and we'll figure out how to efficiently budget this for next fiscal year. So we aren't going to globally get licenses for everybody because of course not everybody can benefit from this. So this does require initiative on your part. And I would note that purchasing these, it's, we have to go through a, requisition process. So, we're not gonna just entertain requests randomly throughout the year. If we could purchase it on a P card, then we could do that, but we can't. We have to go through a whole purchase process. So we'll make that purchase, whoever signs up for the 3 months, we'll do that purchase and then within the next couple of weeks. And then if you've indicated that you want a license for the upcoming fiscal year, then we will make that purchase for July 1. So that's it. So thank you for sticking with this and going 5 minutes over. Does anybody have any questions? Comments? No? Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Hope this was helpful. And again, we'll share that through Sarah, that material there, the reference material. Have a great afternoon.